No, no. Good job. Oh, yeah. Yeah, no problem. We're a sanitary bunch of group, you know?
Yeah, that's great.
Should put on my packet because it was not picking.
Why?
Should put my packet tie. See? Yeah. How are you? Yeah.
We have people on the line.
There are, so we're live. We don't know who's all there right now.
You know?
No, we haven't asked. I just told them that we are.
Hey, Bev, you there?
I am, sir.
Julie?
Yes, I'm here.
Pam?
I'm here.
Steve? Steve, are you on?
Yeah, once I turn off mute, yeah.
All right. I didn't want to start. And then we have a representative DOJ on?
Yes, we do. We have a group at DOJ participating. This is David Meany. I'm the administrator for the Division of Legal Services. Also with me are Deputy Attorney General Andy Cook, Deputy Solicitor General Dan Weddington, and Assistant Attorney Generals Anthony Rusomano and Tom Bellavia.
All right.
Hello, this is Misha Tabler, Solicitor General. I'm on the call remotely.
And I'm Paul Connell, Senior Counsel. I'm on the phone remotely as well.
Are we expecting anybody else?
No, thank you all for joining us.
No. Well, I believe that we have everyone available for scheduled. With that, I'd request that this meeting formally be called to order. This is the special meeting of the Wisconsin Elections Commission as it relates to the petition for a recount. Before we start, I'd like the administrator's report of the appropriate meeting notice.
Yes, we posted this notice actually Saturday over the weekend in compliance with the open meetings law.
And now that we've officially started, I need an official roll call of the commissioners. Beverly Gill,
Here.
Julie Clancy,
Here.
Ann Jacobs,
Here.
Steve King,
Present.
and Don Noes is to my left. And I am Mark Thompson, the chair of the Wisconsin Elections Commission. Good morning, America. This commission was recently formed in June of 2015. It is 2016, excuse me, more recently than I had said. We are currently made up of 3 Democrats and 3 Republican appointees. We have to date been unanimous in our decisions. Our job is to make sure that they're fair and efficient and unrigged elections in the state of Wisconsin. And we believe that the last election, the presidential election, went through under the leadership of Michael Haas with very, very few bumps. And we were confident in our popular vote count. Per the law, the parties are allowed to request a recount. And that is why we are here today. As the chair, I wanted to move as quickly as possible to make sure that there would be no accusations or allegations that anyone on this commission was trying to do something to stop the vote from being certified, in violation of the federal safe harbor provisions. And for that reason, that's why I'm assuming most of you are out in the audience here today. And with that, we will go to the item on the agenda, which is specifically the presidential election recount timeline and procedural issues. And who's handling that, Mike?
Ross Hine will handle that. I'll just say, just as an introductory note, so that the public knows, when the commission receives a recount petition, as long as the petition is valid, it only needs to state a belief that there was a mistake in the vote total, and as long as the required recount fee is paid, if any is required, the commission does not have any discretion or option to deny the petition, and the commission must issue a recount order. But there are some procedural issues that the staff is recommending for the procedures for the recount statewide for the county canvass boards, and the chair and the staff thought it would be best for the commission to have an opportunity to weigh in on some of those procedures. So most importantly, to start with, the staff has proposed a timeline for the statewide recount, and our election supervisor, Ross Hine, is going to walk through that for us.
Thanks, Mike. So, should I move it over? Thanks. So in your materials today, we have a general timeline for which we are proposing the statewide recount for the office of the President of the United States to take place. And it is an abbreviated time frame due to the safe harbor provision of federal law, which requires any election dispute to be settled within 35 days of the election. So essentially, a statewide recount would need to be completed in less than 2 weeks. And given staff's experience with the 2011 Supreme Court recount, it is going to be a very tight and aggressive time frame, and it is going to require election officials throughout the state to work extended hours during the week and work over the weekend as well. On Friday, we received a petition from both the Jill Stein campaign and the Rocky De La Fuente campaign. We communicated to our county clerks that we received this petition with a tentative time frame so preparations could commence as soon as possible. Today we are asking by noon to have all Wisconsin county clerks to submit an estimate of what they believe their costs will be should a statewide recount be required. We will accumulate those estimates from each of the 72 county clerks, and then we will provide an estimate to both campaigns by close of business today. On Tuesday, November 29th, we are requesting that either the Stein or De La Fuente campaign submits full payment to the Wisconsin Elections Commission. Once we have received payment, we will then issue a recount order to all presidential candidates. On Wednesday, November 30th, staff would hold a teleconference at the Capitol for all 72 county clerks to participate to go over the recount rules and procedures. The teleconference is tentatively scheduled for 10 a.m. and will be held via webinar. On Thursday, December 1st, we are proposing that all recounts in the state of Wisconsin begins. In Wisconsin, recounts are conducted for state and federal offices at the county office, and that is done by the County Board of Canvassers. And so each of the 72 county canvassers, we would request to have them start by December 1st and to work continuously until completion on Tuesday, December 13th. We are proposing the recount to be completed by noon, and we would then prepare the official recount certification and have that signed by one of the commissioners at 3 p.m. We anticipate that there will be many counties that will complete earlier than that time frame, especially our smaller municipalities. But I know, in speaking with a few county clerks, that it is going to be very challenging for many of our county clerks and their canvass members to complete the statewide recount in less than 2 weeks. At the bottom of page 2, you'll see a recommended motion requesting that the commission approve the above timeline for the likely statewide recount.
Thank you. Now, before we get into the specifics of the motion, I'll open up the meeting for any questions or comments from any of my fellow commissioners.
Commissioner Thompson, this is Ann Jacobs. I do have a question for Mr. Hines. What needs to be accomplished by the commission in the 3 hours allotted on December 13th? I'm concerned that we may not be allowing ourselves enough time to accomplish any tasks if anything goes wrong. It seems like a rather razor margin of error there, and perhaps you could tell us what it is that we would need to accomplish, or obviously you all as staff, during that period of time, and why such a tight time frame is the recommendation.
Sure, Commissioner Jacobs, the recount certification is issued directly through our Canvas application. And the Canvas application will allow each of the county Canvas, or I should say county clerks, submit their recount totals, and whether that is changed from the initial results that were inputted likely last week. So that should be a fairly straightforward process where we can just easily print that certification. We can get the majority of the documents ready in advance, and that's why we only think it's going to be a 3-hour time frame, because it's going to be a fairly straightforward process.
I would also add, Diane Lowe, our lead election specialist, is here, and she had prepared to certify the official Canvas results tomorrow, which we will do for all contests except for those that are under recount. Some of those documents merely need to be redated for signature, assuming that the result does not change. We also would expect, as Ross said, that many counties will finish before the 12th, and we will be able to look at those results as we go along, and we will not be waiting for 70 counties to finish on the last day. Our job here is, it's a pretty abbreviated task. We need to print out the report, make sure that we understand if there are any significant differences, that we can consult with the county clerk. But we can do that also as we go along, and we would expect many counties in the state, 72 counties, that will be able to finish within a week or shortly after that.
I would just add, Mike, that, and this is Ross Hine again, we did want to give county canvassers as much time as possible. And so it might not seem like that additional 4 or 5 hours, on Tuesday the 13th would really make a difference, but we wanted to give the maximum time frame because it is such a consolidated, abbreviated time frame.
One task, just to dig into the details a little bit more, one task that the county clerk has to do after the recount is finished, all the ballots are counted. If they do not have election management software that electronically inputs the data into our system, they need to hand enter that. And in some cases, they will need to hand enter at least the last results that they are finishing on the last day or so. And some clerks, their practice is to have the canvass board be dismissed on the day that they finish and to come back on the next morning merely to sign the certification. That may be the case in some counties, that they may want that extra time to make sure their documents are in order for signature the following morning.
Mr. Reynolds?
Hey, Mark.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Mr. King.
This is Steve, yeah. Question for Mike. It might be helpful for folks to understand what rights the other presidential candidates that were on our ballot have vis-a-vis the county recounts.
Sure, there's been a lot of questions about that, especially over the weekend. Every candidate, first of all, has the right, every candidate who is on the ballot as a presidential candidate has the right to request a recount. Right now we have 2 recount petitions pending, but also every candidate has a right to have representation at every recount canvass board at every county in the state to review ballots, potentially to raise objections or challenges either to ballots or procedures that are being used, and to preserve those objections for potential court review. And so with that involved, we have 7 presidential candidates. I wouldn't expect that all of them will have representatives, but certainly some of them will. And that process and those rights do tend to take some extra time in the recount process.
Thanks.
Mark, this is Julie Glancy. I have a question.
Go ahead.
Is the state going to be monitoring the counties in some way to find out daily kind of where they are in the process, so that if there is a county that's falling behind, you're going to know it sooner rather than, the last day?
Sure, Commissioner Glancy, this is Ross Hine. So I believe you participated in the 2011 Supreme Court recount, and that recount on a daily basis. We ask county clerks to provide us a daily summary of the reporting units that were completed. And we would then, the next day, accumulate that for each of the 72 counties and post that on our website. We are proposing a similar process just to keep the public and any candidate representatives aware of the progress being taken place. So we will know pretty much within 24 hours where each of the 72 county clerks and their canvass board members are in the recount process.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Don.
This is Ann Jacobs. Following up on that, what happens if news comes on that day and we haven't heard from one of our 1,800 counting units?
Well, there's 1,854 municipal clerks and 72 county clerks, so it's a little more than 1,800.
Well, I was spitballing it, but either way.
I was trying to be more precise. Go ahead.
So just generally speaking, there is a federal law we have discussed. It's known as the Safe Harbor date. Under that federal law, any challenge to a state's presidential votes needs to be resolved by the 35th day after Election Day. If that is not accomplished, the result is not that the state's electoral votes are forfeited. We want to make that clear. The result is that Congress, first of all, the Electoral College representatives for Wisconsin are scheduled to meet on December 19th at noon, as are the electoral slates for every other state. If a recount contest is not completed by the 13th, federal law provides that Congress is not required to honor the slate of electors chosen to represent that state. In this case, the Republican Party representatives representing the Donald Trump campaign. The statute, as far as I can tell, does not say that Congress is required to reject the slate, just that Congress is not required to honor it. I take that to mean it can still honor that slate of electors, although we have not done extensive research on that statute. Now, if Congress does not honor the slate of electors, then the decision goes to Congress. Both houses of Congress decide which slate of electors represents the state's electoral votes. In the case of a split Congress, if both houses of Congress do not agree, then the decision ultimately goes back to the governor of the state. So while there is a federal deadline, and while we are requiring county boards to do everything they can to meet that federal deadline, we do want to make it clear that there may not be, in the end, a practical effect as to where the electoral votes for the state of Wisconsin go, assuming the result does not change. It's a procedural statute. It is significant when you have a dispute really about if the election is so close that there is a real dispute about which slate of electors should be recognized when Congress ultimately accepts the electoral votes of each state.
Mr. Chair, a couple things. Just to clarify, as I understand it, the recounts are done at the county level. The local municipal clerks, the 1,800 and how many? 54. Don't have an official role, although they may be hired or volunteer to help count. And then the other question is, I have two questions really. From 8 a.m. on December 1st to 8 p.m. on December 12th is 300 hours. Round the clock, 24 hours a day. Not expecting that. If we had them, if we wanted the recounts in by 8 p.m. on December 12th, which is a little bit shorter, we'd be shorting them 16 hours. 16. So instead of having 316 hours, they did 300 hours. Would there be something so wrong about that? I understand the desire to give them as much time as possible, but Commissioner Jacobs makes a good point. And then my other question is, has there been any thought to giving them, suggesting milestones so that, for example, we've got a timetable and the recount starts on December 1st. Any thoughts to saying that, by, and I haven't done math, but by December 5th or 6th, you should have 30% of the votes tabulated or calculated or reviewed, etc. Just to just because my concern is that myself being chief among procrastinators, there's this desire, well, we'll get to it, and then suddenly with 48 hours to go, you've got half the county. And that'd be my concern.
No, it's a good point. I agree, Commissioner Millis. And I would invite my colleagues to chime in, but I think that we would certainly suggest that they keep an eye on what their progress is. I think we can't go strictly by a daily deadline, because what we tend to see is that as they get into the recount and the process becomes more familiar, it goes more quickly. And that the progress is slow maybe the first day or two, but as you cycle people into their jobs and their roles, that things are expedited. But I think it's an excellent point that we want to be encouraging them to reach some rough benchmarks throughout the process. And I would note in reviewing some of the estimates that county clerks have been submitting, Brown County, for instance, estimates that if a hand count is required, they would need upwards of 60 or more people. And so the cost itself, while it would be reimbursed, may not be the biggest challenge. It may be finding enough individuals to schedule them to be working during December when they did not plan to on evenings and weekends.
Hi, this is Julie again. I know from my experience in recounts that the first few days you're dealing with the observers and the representatives for the candidates who aren't familiar with the process, and they have a lot of questions, and that kind of delays it in the beginning, in addition to the fact that your workers aren't as familiar with what they're doing. So I agree, trying to set a deadline that evens it out across that time period isn't really realistic.
I think, though, that's just in terms of a formal timeline, I think Commissioner Millis's point is well taken, that we should clearly have internal mechanisms as opposed to maybe an official timeline to follow up. And I'm certain that my fellow commissioners, and certainly I, will be very concerned about the timeline. I mean, part of this process was we wanted to make sure that we were effective and timely in getting this done per the law. And in that regard, I want to just address a couple of things for the public, because many people are asking. One was the issue about the petition and the filing and the estimate and the cost structure. And this whole notion, because the statutes for the folks in the audience and the press are not crystal clear. They could have been clearly drafted in a clearer way. I mean, for example, one key issue was that upon receipt of the petition, which was received Friday at about 3 p.m.
Right.
So that was the Friday after Thanksgiving at 3 p.m. where this body was first legally put on notice of official acts to take. So you got to assume a lot of people were deer hunting, a lot of people were spending family time with Thanksgiving, and you get the notice, and the first thing we had to decide was, when do the clerks provide their estimates of the cost? The statute says promptly. It doesn't define promptly. Other parts of the statute, I do some insurance law, promptly is defined as 10 days. Obviously, as chair, we couldn't wait 10 days to get estimates, because then Mr. Millis would be sitting here saying, why are you trying to stop this process? And we have done everything we could to expedite this together so this gets done. So if you could maybe just address two things. How we're doing this estimate, what are people being provided today at noon in terms of the actual costs, and in that regard touch on the issue of the petition, because the petition, Jill Stein's petition, specifically asked for a hand count, and why it's not within our jurisdiction to order that, and the procedure, and what we're going to make available to all the campaigns in the event they decide to go seek a court order for a hand count. So you want to
Sure.
do that, or you want me to?
I can touch on it quickly. I know some commissioners have a tight deadline, and that we want to get the timeline approved. But regarding the estimate, on Wednesday, when we were notified that a petition was likely to be filed on Friday, we did send an email immediately to county clerks that afternoon, alerting them that they would need to construct an estimate for their cost for the recount. Some of those clerks may have been out of the office already for the holiday by the time that email was sent out. Friday, when we received the petition late in the day, we sent out another email to clerks emphasizing the noon today deadline for them to construct estimates. It is up to each county canvass board whether or not the recount is conducted by hand or by voting, by tabulating equipment under state law. The only way around that is if the candidate seeks a court order that is granted to require a hand count statewide. The burden of proof seems to be fairly high in the statutes, but that would be up to the candidate to initiate that action. Some clerks are submitting to us alternate estimates depending on the method of tabulation. That decision, the method of tabulation, is ultimately up to the county canvass board when they first meet, but we are suggesting to clerks that they provide us an estimate for what they will recommend, the method that they will recommend to the canvass board. We will provide an estimate to the petitioning candidates. The actual cost will be submitted after the recount is completed. If the estimate was too low, the candidates will be on the hook for the balance. If the estimate was too high, then there will be a refund issued to the candidate or candidates who submit the recount.
I mean, just to summarize, and just to make the point, absent a complete payment of the cost tomorrow, there will not be an order for a recount. Assuming that the Stein campaign, by my reading of the Twitter feeds, they have raised the money, they have to pay tomorrow before we proceed.
Right.
Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead, Mr.
Mark,
Green.
back to the respected burden of bodies required to do the counting, especially with hand. If we have 854 local clerks, is there any way to conscript them? I mean, in the simple math says that's about 26 per county. Is there a way to conscript them to aid, and especially some of the larger counties?
Well, I'm sure the county clerks are already in the process of recruiting the municipal clerks to help out, and also to bring their election inspectors who are more familiar with their poll lists and their materials for their reporting units. There is no requirement in the statutes that the municipal clerks must participate in the county canvass. The county clerk can require them to provide information, but as far as being on site and participating as a tabulator, I believe it's not required under the statutes. But I'm sure that many of our municipal clerks will be cooperating with the county clerks and helping them out themselves, and also providing or asking their poll workers to participate.
Good.
Excuse me, in 2011, I was a clerk, and we did bring our election inspectors into the county. They were more than willing to help.
This is Ross. Just one other comment along the same lines. I think because of the tight time frame, county boards are really going to need to set up multiple groups of what we call tabulators as part of the recount. That could be municipal clerks, that could be poll workers, any type of election official, but they're really going to need to have multiple, essentially tabulating groups set up, going through multiple reporting units just to ensure that they complete that timeline. And just one other point, all ballots are reviewed prior to tabulation, whether it's being counted by hand or by voting equipment. Election officials must review each ballot before that tabulation is conducted.
Steve, one thing that I think is really important in this is, part of the beauty of our system and why I think it's been, the Wisconsin system, and why any allegations that it wasn't fair or that there were illegal votes counted, it really goes to the heart that we have our fellow citizens, 1,854 municipal clerks, 72 county clerks, and all the volunteers they count it. It's very, very decentralized. And to say that we didn't count them correctly the first time, or, that it somehow there were illegal votes being counted was really inappropriate. The last time there was a recount for the Supreme Court, I think it was 1.5 million votes, and roughly then on a recount there was like 500 votes changed, 300 votes changed. One thing that we're going to find out about our system is that we have, I think that the official, it wasn't the official, it would have been the official certification. We have a difference between the Clinton and the president-elect of 22,177 votes. I don't think that we will find in this that our fellow citizens counted these votes accurately, and it will be very interesting to see how many over 300, if that were inappropriate. So if nothing else, this is going to give us a very good audit. It's going to reassure Wisconsin voters that we have a fair system, that we're not counting illegal votes, we're not counting dead people's votes, and it's really, really important to know that in Wisconsin, elections are fair and accurate and conducted by hardworking people, my fellow citizens.
You said, Mark, does anybody recall how long it took to count those little over 1 million votes in that Supreme Court recount?
It was roughly a month or a little more, Ross, is that right? A month's time. We did have a little bit of an anomaly in Waukesha County, which took an extremely long period of time. They were being very meticulous, which was understandable given the controversy surrounding that election in that county in particular. We did intervene at some point in that recount and provided some suggestions to Waukesha County about how they could expedite the recount, and I think if we saw particular counties that were struggling during this process, we would take the same approach.
And I think, Steve, we also have encouraged the the county clerks to have actual costs to make sure that they have the funds available to recruit the necessary people in a very timely fashion.
But that anomaly aside, it took a month to count a little over 1 million votes.
Right. But they weren't under the same kind of pressure that we are. I think the federal statute's very clear that we have to be done.
Right, a week before the electoral college.
Right. I mean, we all know, I think we all agree, all 6 of us agree that this needs to be done in a timely fashion. And I know that some folks have had other things on their schedule this morning. But before we go to the specific motion, I would ask that we modify the motion consistent with Mr. Millis and Ms. Jacobs' concerns about being done on the 13th. How about if we adopt that it would be the recount done on the 8 p.m. on the 12th? That will give then the commission time to, that gives us more time in the event we have some issues going on.
I agree. I'll move recommended motions as amended.
I'll second that motion.
At the risk of having Diane stare at me and say, "You can blame it on me, okay?"
So, everybody clear? We're adopting the proposed schedule by the staff with that one change. Can you live with that, Mr. Haas?
The question is, will the county clerks and canvass boards be able to live with it? We will certainly communicate that is the commission's directive.
Right. That's right.
Well, I think we have to say to everybody involved that it's really up to us to make it happen, and be an example.
Absolutely.
But that will take.
I still think Don's motion or recommendation that we have some targets doesn't have to be part of the motion, but certainly should be communicated by the staff to the respective counties that, by a certain time we'd like to have half of the votes counted or something like that.
Steve, I'm sitting right next to Mike. He's wrote it down. He has a big star right by it, so
Okay, great.
he'll be on it. I mean, the other thing too is, remember, at any point in time between now and during this count, if anybody wants a full commission meeting, all they have to do is contact me. We'll have it again if we need to have a meeting. I mean, everybody has been, you know, very cooperative, and thank you all for being available Monday morning on very, very short notice. With that, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
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 Aye. I think we had all 6. Any opposed? So there you go. We have our timeline. Now we have DOJ on the line. I trust that in the event there is court action taken, you'll fully represent our views with the judge and make sure that this follows through, consistent with it.
Yes, we are prepared to do that.
Are there any concerns on your end with our timeline before we end up with this meeting?
We don't have any concerns with the timeline or the discussion concerning the time.
Well, we thank you much. I know that we put it out there notice early over the weekend, and we've been working with your staff last week, anticipating that maybe there would be, and we appreciate your involvement, and thank you.
Welcome.
Can we touch on that?
We did touch on it.
We probably should.
All right, let's go to the recommended motion on
Page 3.
page 3.
This is the memo that I sent to the commission late last night, so I apologize for it, but most of it contained some information, at least, that you had received in general previously. The memo related to the recount estimate and fee, as well as the option for a hand count versus machine count, and also our voting equipment audit. There's two recommended motions, one on the bottom of page 3 and one on page 4.
Well, let's deal with the issue on the bottom of page 3. What is your recommended motion? We'll have some discussion on it.
The recommended motion is for the commission to approve the staff's recommendations, directing staff to provide the estimated recount fee today, including any valid state costs, to the petitioning candidates. Again, today, for payment due at the close of business tomorrow, November 29th. Further, that staff will be directed to assess the full estimated recount fee to both candidates, unless the candidates each submit payment for 1/2 of the total estimated cost by the close of business today. Or, I'm sorry, the close of business tomorrow.
Mr. Chair, I had a little sidebar with Nate over here. I was going to suggest maybe a few friendly amendments to the motion. Close of business, why don't we say 4:30 Central Time? Let's make it clear that's the close of business. And then I think the standard is, it's not necessary that each campaign pay half, but that between the two campaigns, the entire fee is paid. Is that right?
Well, there's a little bit more detail in the text of the memo. Our recommended, or our staff approach at this point, there's a few ways to do this. We have to receive, there's no question we have to receive the full payment. I think our staff consensus is that if Mr. De La Fuente wants to be a petitioner, that that campaign needs to bear an equal burden of the recount fee. That is at least our recommendation.
Okay, well then, if that's, I guess I saw that, and I wasn't sure if that was, or is that your interpretation of the statutes?
It is.
Okay.
And there are, I think, reasonable arguments for treating it as you suggested, Commissioner. But it seems to the staff that there needs to be an obligation, an equal obligation on each candidate who files a result.
So the way the motion is written, as recommended, it would be that if the total amount is paid, and if the recount can go forward, if Mr. De La Fuente's wants to be considered a petitioner, he would have to pay at least half.
Correct. I think we would initially give them each campaign the full bill. If it's $1 million, we tell them this is what has to be paid, and they pay it. If it turns out that they both simultaneously pay us $1 million, we would refund 1/2 of that to each of them.
I think it has to be unequivocally clear, though, unless the full actual costs are paid by the close of business on Tuesday. Are we saying 4:30?
4:30 Central Time.
For both November 28th and November 29th, correct?
That's-
We have close of business twice, right?
Oh, it should be payments on Tuesday, the 29th, right?
Right.
So it's 4:30 tomorrow.
Right.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll move the recommended motion with the substituting 4:30 p.m. For close of business on Tuesday, November 29th.
Second?
Second, this is Ann.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. All- Any opposed? Thank you. Beverly, are you still there?
I still am for a few more minutes,
Okay.
Yeah, just let us know when you have to run, okay?
like quarter after.
All right, well, I think we're gonna get there. Do you have another recommended motion?
Right, on page 4, this has to do with the method of recount. As we summarized earlier, the staff position is to honor the statute which allows each county canvass board to determine the method of recount unless there is a court order. The Stein recount petition has requested that we order a hand recount, and so we are recommending that the commission direct staff to decline that request to tally all ballots by hand and to permit each county to determine whether ballots will be counted by hand or using tabulating equipment consistent with existing state law.
I think this.
Move that motion.
Yeah,
Second.
thank you. Yeah, I think this is consistent with our prior discussion and implicit in our prior discussion. So this is just making the point very clear. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed?
Sorry, who seconded that?
I did.
Okay.
Ms. Miller. There's also an issue on the audit. For folks in the audience, Wisconsin is the state that does audits of elections, and so we had a system in place prior to the elections that certain counties would be, and municipalities would be audited. Some of those audits have been completed. We put a hold on the rest of the audits in light of the recount, because if this is paid, the amount is paid for the petition order goes out, we will have a full recount, and I think from my point of view, I don't think we need to do an audit, and it may be good to tell the clerks now that we know you're going to work really, really hard now, and if it's done, we're not going to bother you with an audit later. So, I'd entertain a motion to that effect, that we modify the current audit schedule in the event the fees are paid for the petition and the actual recount takes place.
I'll make that motion, this is Julie.
Thank you, Julie. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any other business? For the open, I think now then is, I would like to go into closed session for those folks that would, do I need a motion?
To go into closed session, yes.
I'd like a motion to go into closed session to address a couple other matters. For those folks that can stay around or stay on the line.
So
All
moved.
right, I do have to leave.
I got you. Can you just vote to allow us, and then we'll fill you in later?
I will.
Thank
I move that
you.
we move into closed session to deal with the litigation update.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
I think just for logistics, what may be easier, since we have a room full of cameras here, is maybe if we adjourn to our large conference room for the commission closed session. I can suggest that.
And then we'll come back in and we'll take questions for the press.
Right. And so, commissioners, if you give us a couple minutes and then dial into the same number, we will set up in the large conference room. And I guess that also applies to DOJ. If you want to participate or listen in to that closed session, we will be using the same conference line.
And frankly, I would really appreciate if you would call in on that.
We will, and I assume you're taking steps that it would be a non-public call-in.
Yes.
Correct.
Very good. We'll call in. What would be the time frame?
I think if you give us 5 minutes.
Okay.
It'll be very short. Thanks. So we're going to go into closed session now. That ends the public session. And for the press, we'll be back in hopefully 15 minutes to a half an hour. And we can take any other questions that you may have at that point in time.